Hello, and welcome to On the Clock, presented by Workstream. If you care about hiring, managing, and retaining hourly employees, you're in the right place. Today's episode brings you a fascinating conversation with Gary Occhiogrosso. Gary is the managing partner at Franchise Growth Solutions, and we talk all about the topic that's on everyone's minds right now, a recession. Gary draws from his decades of franchise restaurant experience to bring you 3 solid suggestions for surviving an economic downturn. We talk about the importance of reducing food cost, why customer experience is crucial, and how to hire and train team members so they're bought in on your recession-proof goals. It's my hope that after listening to this episode, you might be a little less worried about the economic future. Enjoy! Hey Gary, it's so great to have you here. To get things started, you've identified 3 ways that restaurants can prepare for a possible economic downturn. Let's kick it off by having you start with the first thing on that list.
I would start with food cost because in a restaurant, there are really 2 categories of costs. One is what's called cost of goods, which is typically food, paper products, and beverages. What are you selling? And then the labor. So we'll put the labor on the side for the moment. But if we look at cost of goods, how can a restaurateur start to manage cost of goods in a better way? Well, there are several ways. The first thing is what we call menu engineering. So if I'm running an independent restaurant, franchises have a different set of rules. We can talk about that later. But if I'm running a restaurant, I'm gonna do what's called a P mix or a product mix off my point of sale system. And I'm probably gonna knock out the bottom. Let's say I'm selling 50 items on my menu. Okay, just pick a number. I'm probably gonna knock out the bottom 20 or 30% of that. That's not selling. Why am I gonna do that? I'm going to do that for several reasons. First of all, it's going to give me more buying power in the sense that if I have 4 proteins on my menu and now I go down to 2, I can go to my distributor and say, hey, I need a better price on chicken because I'm no longer buying 1,000 pounds a week. I'm buying 3,000 pounds a week because I'm no longer selling 3 other proteins. So that goes up and I have more leverage in terms of, hey, can I get a better price? The other piece is that if I'm selling higher items that have a lower food cost and higher profitability through what's called menu engineering, and that's the first step would be to get rid of those bottom the bottom 20%, 30% of what's not selling. So now everything on my menu is higher profit. It's the best of. So, my guests are getting the best of what they love me for. They're coming in for that. Maybe I've irritated a couple of guests that only come once in a while for that one thing that's on the menu that they come for. Hopefully they'll love me anyway and they'll choose something else. So food cost with menu engineering is a very big piece. The other part to that is things like waste. So if I've got 10 items that I'm selling and I'm moving it, I probably don't have any waste. By the way, my product is probably fresher. Okay. Another conversation for another day, but I'm moving that product. I'm probably not at the end of the day looking at something in my hot table or cold table that didn't sell, because it's a very small percentage of sales that I now have to throw out because that one customer that comes every 3 weeks didn't come in that day for that. Okay. So less waste, better buying power, higher profit items that are up on that menu for people to choose from without sort of compromising the integrity of the menu or the concept. So food cost would be one way to look at what I call the middle of the P&L.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I really like the term menu engineering because it kind of captures the fact that there's more to it than just taking a couple things away from the menu. There's a whole strategy there that you've outlined. All right, let's go to the second thing that you recommend restaurants can do.
All restaurateurs can elevate what I call the customer experience. And the customer experience is often, with our clients anyway, what we sort of preach and teach and counsel is there's a very big difference between sort of the overall experience that they're going through, and customer service. People confuse customer service with customer experience. Customer service might be 5, 6, 7, 8 things that lead to that great result where the guest walks out of the restaurant and has a great feeling. You've left them with a great feeling, and I'm going to come back. Whereas customer service might only be 1 or 2 pieces within that entire experience. So things to me like, teaching team members to make sure that they acknowledge guests when they walk in. One of the things that we were taught way back when in Dunkin', in the morning hours, we'd have a line of people. Well, if someone came in and you kind of made eye contact and said, hey, I'll be right with you, even though there were 5 people in line. So the guest knew, like, okay, they know I'm here, and it's a greeting, it's comfort, it's a connection. If we thought about it from a social media point of view, we'd say, wow, it's an engagement. And that's very, very, very important. So the overall customer experience, when I'm in a restaurant and I ask the server, hey, can you go get me some water? And they go, no problem. Okay, I realize it's good intentioned, but what's the energy there? The energy is that maybe it was a problem, but for you, it's not a problem, okay? The response is, my pleasure, or coming right up if you want to be corny, okay? So it's those things that create an environment and an energy where the guest experience is elevated. All restaurateurs should be doing that, recession or not, but in a recession, it's far more important because it's sort of the value add to the food.
Yeah, definitely. Those are some great points. All right, let's move on to the third thing.
None of those things will work. Okay, none of those things, the decreased food cost and elevated experience and more, none of that will work if you don't get your team to buy in. Your team members have to buy into this. Otherwise, they're standing, think about it, they're standing behind the POS system and they're playing with their phone, and now somebody walks in and they're still playing on their phone. Okay. That's because they haven't bought in. And that really doesn't have much of anything to do with recession. That has to do with the culture, the tone, the mission. Is the employee, is the team members, I like to use that term, are they showing up every day because they really want to serve the guest? They want to put the best food out there as possible. They really believe in what they're doing. They're having fun, and you get that team buy-in, which often, relates to, hey, you have to make it a game. You have to make it fun for them. So as I've often said, nothing works a lot, but everything works a little. So you have to take that approach, because if you're looking for that one magic bullet, that one thing that's going to help you survive in a recession, you're not going to find it. It's a lot of little things, and it's executing it. It could be, how clean is my bathroom? Are there fingerprints on the door? As I said, is my team member saying, hey, how are you? Thank you. Come back again soon. Those things really are the things that, when executed properly and consistently, will help you not only get through tough times, but will blow you into orbit in good times.
There's so much value in all of the things that you just said. I especially like that you pointed out the importance of team buy-in. Shameless plug, Workstream is all about hiring and retaining employees, right? And I think it's worth pointing out that you actually can and should screen for some of the attributes that will lead to better team buy-in down the road, right? It's not something you should only worry about after the fact, but it's something you should be looking for at the beginning of that process. Let's shift gears just a little bit to this concept of trading down. Can you talk a little bit about what that is and how restaurants can avoid having their customers get this feeling like they're trading down?
Okay, so let's say for a family of 4 people are now, maybe they would go to a family type dining restaurant, pick a brand, Applebee's, Chili's, Fridays, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Well, that event is probably a $60 or an $80 event. So now, because of quote recession and fear of whatever, now they're going to a fast casual restaurant. So now they're kind of walking up to a counter and, what the goal here is that you want that experience, while it would be different, you want that experience to certainly be as joyful, if you will, or as fun and as nice as the full service experience. So how are restaurateurs able to do that? By the way, including franchisees. I mean, so again, if we talk about elevating that experience, things like, I don't know, maybe after 6 p.m. when the person orders their burrito at the counter, rather than, and then they go sit down and calling them back up or number 7, your food is ready or whatever. Maybe, they get a little stand with the number and someone brings the food out to them. So you have, what we call modified table service. So it elevates that dinner experience to, okay, it's not full service, but hey, I'm not feeling like I'm in a fast food joint or I'm in a fast casual place. That's something that I think is important. Having small items that you can tag on, sell that cookie, sell the upsell. When I was in the fresh Mexican business, and if you go into some of the big fresh, what I call Amerimex chains now, they're selling you guacamole and chips. Okay, so typically, like in a full service Mexican restaurant, guacamole and chips, or chips for sure, they'd put on the table. But in a fast casual, you might have to purchase those. Well, those are great add-ons, because now, even though if your customer count is down, you can increase the value of the customer a little bit at a time, and you can increase the experience also, because where they might order a dessert in a full-serve restaurant, well, now maybe they're getting that cookie, or there's an ice cream serving, or there's some easy-to-serve dessert product, and rather than having the entree that they might have at a full-serve restaurant, there's maybe chips and dip, or maybe there's something that's out there that doesn't cost a lot of money that elevates the overall experience. I think increased efficiency is sort of something that helps folks feel that they're in a better place. I mean, when I go to a drive-through hamburger joint, if they get my order right, they've met my expectation. Okay, it's down here. Okay, but if I'm used to going to a full service restaurant, my expectation is here. I don't want to feel like I've traded all the way down, and gee, if they just get this right, I'll be happy. You could bring it to somewhere in the middle, and you do that by increasing efficiency. And I mentioned earlier about the no problem thing. I think that's a big deal. That to me is that's the energy in the restaurant. And there's just so much of that restaurateurs can do to make folks feel like they're not trading down.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. One last question for you. I know you have some pretty strong feelings about discounting. Can you explain why you don't believe in discounting and what you would recommend that restaurants do instead?
Sure. Look, discounting doesn't work on any long-term level. There's what I call price value perception. Many years ago, maybe not so many years ago, 10, 15 years ago, McDonald's had their dollar menu. We all remember the dollar menu. And you could actually buy a double cheeseburger for $1. Insane as far as I was concerned. Now, a couple of things. First of all, when the double cheeseburger was no longer on the dollar menu, I certainly didn't buy it, because in my mind, it was only worth $1. You were selling it for $1 for years. Now, all of a sudden, you want $2.50 for it? I'm not doing that. So when you discount, it's not just the sale at that moment. It's the long-lasting psychological effect that it has on the price-value perception of what you're doing. So I've now cheapened my product. So competing on price, just as a secondary piece to that, is I go to $1, you go to 99 cents. I go to 89 cents, you go to 79 cents. All we're doing is killing each other. And the guest is just going to stand on the side and go, well, you know what? There's going to be another coupon coming out, or there's going to be another Instagram thing where I can get something free. I'm not going to Daniel's restaurant today. I'll wait till next week because I know there's going to be something free. You just sort of die doing that. There's no end to that. So what do? because it's easy to say what not to do, but identifying the problem is easy. The solution is usually more challenging. The question there is provide value. Now, you should always be providing value, but how do I provide more value? How do I, again, elevate the experience, as I mentioned earlier? How do I, instead of tying the price to the product, how can I maybe offer a discount, but tie it to an event? So maybe on, I don't know, pick a night. Thursday nights, I have family nights, okay? And kids pay half price. Now you might say, well, Gary, what do you mean? You just said don't discount. Stop. It's not what I said. I said, if you just discount for the sake of discounting and you tie it to the value of the product, we have a problem because it should go on forever. But if you're coming in for an event that's only tonight, or it's the third Thursday of every month, the price is now tied to the event. So when I no longer have the event, I have not tarnished the integrity or the price value of my product. So you can still do it, but you have to have a psychological workaround. And by the way, in the quick service business, it really does come down to two things, okay? So if we go back to sort of the full service restaurant, like the big fancy restaurant, what's the server doing? Selling you a drink, selling you an appetizer, selling you the special, selling you dessert, selling you, I don't know, an after dinner drink, selling you coffee, whatever, building the ticket. But in a fast casual restaurant or in a fast food restaurant, how do I build a ticket? I'm not going to be able to sell you, 40 pounds of fried chicken. It's not happening. Okay, so how do I do that? Well, you can't. So in the quick service business and in the fast casual business, it comes down to frequency of visit. How often are you? I might not get $100 out of you every time you come in. Maybe I'm only getting $10 out of you or $12 out of you. So I got to get you to come back 8 or 9 times. How do I do that? I have to create what I call the occasion to use. So you might use me for lunch because I'm convenient and I'm near your office or your home or whatever. But what can I do to create another occasion for you to come in? That's a big piece of it in terms of how you can actually create value without simply just saying, hey, buy one, get one free.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of On the Clock, presented by Workstream. And thanks to Gary Occhiogrosso for sharing his time with us. We'll include some links in the show notes to learn more about Gary and franchise growth solutions. And if you want to learn more about this podcast, go to workstream.us/podcast.